Welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, the Football Grump, and I hope you had a good bye weekend. We're recording this on Thursday, but it's coming out on Monday. Grump, how you doing? How you feeling? How you doing? How you feeling?
Doing good, feeling good, doing good, feeling good. I'm finally getting over my cold, and in about a week I will be boarding a flight back to New Jersey, and I will probably get sick again.
Don't get sick, because I'm going to be around you, you know?
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
mean,
cough a lot, boogers, everything.
no, 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 no. I'm excited for that. I guess we need to talk like it's Monday because it is going to be Monday and people are listening to this. But hey, yeah, it's gonna be a crazy week. So I'm gonna see you Thursday. We're gonna record a preview podcast. We're gonna have a podcast at the stadium on Sunday if all goes well enough. Well, at least gonna try to.
Mhm.
And then we're doing the Jordan Renan Breaking Big Blue event, which Grump will be at Shannon Rose in Clifton, New Jersey on Monday evening. So make sure you're out there. Quick. Actually, I was gonna ask about the Fire Joe Shane video of what your thoughts were on it. Obviously, it's not gonna get as much buzz as last year because last year a lot of people didn't want to fire Joe Shane, where now it's almost exclusively people do, and it doesn't get the second win from the Giants calling me and complaining about it that it got last year. But what were your overall thoughts on it before we get to the Joe Shane presser in this?
Well, it was just like last year's video. It was well researched, articulate, calm, and just presented like a presentation that you would do for work or for school or for anything else. Like this was not like flying off the handle, lunatic stuff or exaggerating things beyond their proportion. And I think it was fair. I mean, you definitely gave credit where it was due. I think at some points there's credit you handed out that I think a lot of people don't want to give credit for. And I think you hit on all the points. It's pretty well rounded. And I think that's what makes it compelling, right? Because it's hard to argue with somebody who's got all bases covered and gives credit where it's due because it really presents a balanced debate as if you've got both sides of it covered for the other side. I don't really think you left any stone unturned. There's not really much else that can be said that wasn't in the video. And overall, I think anybody, I mean, you leave it up for everybody to decide, but I think it presents a very unbalanced scale at the end.
Yeah, it's I'm pretty heavily on the Fire Joe Shane train, since last year when I made that video. Um, but I do take that serious. I don't I like, I know we're just a podcast, but like I I try to be patient, right? Like, so I'm not gonna say to fire anybody until I truly believe, like, nope, you're just not the right person for the job, right? Like Jason Garrett was probably the quickest trigger I ever had where I'm like, yeah, this is someone who needs to be fired. But I try to wait and give that person as much grace until I'm just like, you know what? I don't think this is the right thing for the New York Giants. And I hope to get to a point where we don't have to do that because it's kind of tiring talking about firing people. But I did think it was a fair and balanced video. Like you said, I wanted to give him credit for things that, as much as I would love to play into the whole like, he didn't even want Jackson Dart. Like, you know what? The guy traded up and drafted Jackson Dart. He gets
And
credit.
and it was a good trade too. Like it's very, very well navigated situation that he
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, I'm not gonna take that away from him, even though I think there is a good chance he would have been happy taking Shador Sanders. So let's get into this mailbag first. This episode was brought to you by some special people. We got Frank William, not Frank Williams, just Frank William, William Frank. You should flip your name around. It'd be Bill Frank or Frank Bill. Greg, just regular old Greg. Hope your dad is doing well, Greg. He almost played quarterback back in 2021. Tim Frazier. Down goes Tim Frazier. Just Scott, Francis Scott Keys, and then Leo Prince Leo. Grump, who are these special people?
these people with mostly just first names and no last names, they went to patreon.com/Giants Nation and signed up for one of the two tiers available where they get to receive stickers in the mail from you, Bobby Skinner. They also get to enter into a monthly free t-shirt raffle. They get access to hang out during live recordings of episodes just like this one. And most importantly, they get access to weekly game tape breakdowns that you do. They were glad that they did.
Glad you did. Take it away, Steve.
Mail time.
Mail time.
The mail's here. Come on. Guys.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
Thanks, Steve from Blues Clues Grump. Let's get into the mail.
Let's get into the mail here. First question comes from Ghost in BK. Ghost in Bankruptcy? Oh, gosh. This is a multi-parter because it's the season of giving. If you could have asked Joe Schoen any one question at his press conference, what would it have been? Did your opinion / perception of Shane's job security change at all post-press conference? And do you understand the question?
I do understand the question. We don't need to rehash the whole press conference, but I do think it's worth us talking about on the podcast. He seemed really nervous, but I'll say this. He was never going to come out of that press conference as a win. Never. I actually think he did a fairly decent enough job of damage control as much as he could, even though there's not much that he could do. He deflected to not good enough to, 5 wins over the last 2 years. The only thing that I thought that was just like, all right, give me a break is saying, I'm never going to make the same mistake twice. I'm like, dude, that's like that's like your defining trait of why I don't like you as a GM is because you do make the same mistake twice and thrice and twice and Quince and, DSCC at the, all that stuff.
17.
Yeah, it's just she's kind of made the Jalen Hyatt mistake 17 different times if you think about it. So that was the only thing I'm like, well, that's just a joke. You patch things up one thing at a time while making the same mistakes over and over again. And did finally kind of blame coaching when he said like, why aren't we maximizing what we have here? But overall, he seemed extremely nervous, which I kind of I fully understand because right now he's in a situation that he's never been in where the large majority of the fan base is mad at him. Just not even just think he might not be the guy for the job. The large majority is mad at him, and he doesn't have Brian Daboll at his side anymore. They just fired a defensive coordinator a week before getting blown out on prime time. They've lost 7 straight games, and you're getting ready to just answer, 20 minutes worth of questions on why are you so bad at this? I mean, the guy must have had the biggest pit in his stomach before he walked out there, and you could tell he was nervous and tried to control it as much as he could. But once he kind of had to get forced into some follow-up questions, that's where you saw him crack a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll start this off by saying that of all the people watching this, so that, you and, everybody watching this, I probably usually take the least out of press conferences that are like these, out of everybody. Because, Joe Schoen, John Mara, they talk to the media so infrequently and they're always very planned that they're prepared for. And this is sort of what you get, is you get a lot of like, I understand your question. You know what I mean? Like that right there, that's preparation. That's how you just kind of like calmly, acknowledge and you start adding word salad things to just circumnavigate the entire question and just move on. So generally, I don't take that much away from press conferences, and I take more away from like actions than I do words. So I never go into these things like with like a pen and paper ready to like rip apart word for word the answers from a transcript like it really matters. You know what I mean? So I'm not really ready here to eviscerate everything on that level, but at the same time, like, yeah, 100%. Like, the whole thing was weird. Showing up like a half hour late was super weird. He did a pretty good job, like you said, of just kind of the canned responses and just getting through the questions and moving on. He took ownership of some things and eventually you could see, like you said, like the follow-up questions started the passing of the buck. For me, one of the most illuminating answers for him was not necessarily just the admission of mistakes and saying that, like, I've made mistakes, I haven't batted 1,000, whatever. And I totally agree with you. Like the most damning thing that made me want to strangle him was saying that, like, I learned from mistakes and don't make the same mistake twice. Is dude's just a walking, into the same wall over and over and over again. But I thought the admission that he said early on we strayed a little bit from what we believe in was almost like uh a direct line to 2023, which to me was his greatest misstep, was the entire 2023 offseason where they just completely strayed from what they did in 2022, where they left no stone unturned. They went and found everything they could on the cheap. They made everybody fight for roster positions. Nothing was given. Everything had to be earned. And then in 2023, it was almost like everything was given and they were ready to move for a Super Bowl. And they made all these crazy win now moves. I thought that was illuminating that he at least had that level of self scouting. But otherwise, I mean, it looked like a very nervous man up there. Like you said, all alone too. Like he walked into this job, basically didn't give Brian Daboll an interview or interview anybody else, and had somebody at his side that is no longer there. And he really did stand alone on that stage, both physically and metaphorically. It was a mess, but to me, the weirdest thing was just believing. Did it feel like the press conference was over or like there was a time limit? He just kind of like walked away and then like had one more thing he had to answer for Renan and then like stepped back, sort of said into the microphone and then bailed.
Yeah, that was definitely weird. And, I kind of wish if he is the GM going forward, I kind of wish like, you know what, have a little bit of like a screw it mindset of like, you know what, like this is right. This is going in the right direction. I don't care what anybody says. As much as Chris Ballard and folks get clowned on that, like they believe in what they're doing and that where I think Joe Schoen is very reactionary and as a general manager. I think that was the most important thing. And to get back to the question, he was asked if he was given any assurances from ownership, right? And last year he was confident, like yeah, I'm going to be back. Like we have great dialogue with ownership. He said ownership's going to evaluate everything at the end of the season as they should, meaning no. It does feel like the tide is changing a little bit on his job security, even though I'm, I still hear things and, we're not insiders, but, you still hear things that make you think like, yeah, he's safe and that like they're still operating with him as that he's going to be their GM next year. And it's, maybe these last 4 games matter. The, Connor article, talking about it, seems kind of important, but that was the thing where he did say like he basically said, no, I haven't had any assurances that I'm going to be the GM next year.
So
Maybe why he felt so nervous in this thing
it
too.
could be. Yeah, it could be. Look, my feelings on his job security did change a little bit after this. It felt shakier from the moment he was over a half hour late and then stormed off the stage. But I don't think that the press conference itself changed anything.
No,
That's
no.
yeah, like his demeanor and actions didn't feel very secure. Ultimately, though, I think the original report that we heard that Brian Daboll was gone and Joe Schoen would be safe is probably that felt more truthful to me than the subsequent reports. It's like, well, he may not be that to me felt like a damage control report that was leaked out. And again, like I know Joe Schoen doesn't sound as confident, whatever, but like again, these press conferences are planned for. They know this question's coming, or at least there's a good chance of this question coming, and could have easily been told, like, listen, don't tell them that you're like we have to stick with this story that we're evaluating things. So yeah, that it is definitely illuminating, but I'm not like I don't know. I'm not believing a whole lot that comes out of this stuff.
Yeah, me either. He's definitely was prepared for it. Here's the answer to the other part of the question of like, what did you want asked that was missed? I think the biggest thing would be hearing something on the pending free agents of, you know what? I actually, with Wan'Dale and Flawed, I think those conversations are bigger. I would like to hear what his thoughts were on Jermaine Illuminor, because Illuminor obviously wants the bag. He tweets what he does on purpose because he wants the bag, and I'm going to do everything I can these last 4 games for you. Like, that's what kind of the other thing that I would have wanted to hear that wasn't touched upon. But I understand why they didn't get to that with basically 20 minutes to talk about those things. And if he's retained, he'll have a press conference at the end of the year when you can ask him those things.
Yeah, I mean, this is really difficult because
Or a vision for the head coach. I would have liked to hear about that.
so those are really good examples of questions because it takes the onus off of Joe Schoen explaining himself, and it does sort of continue to answer the question of like, why do you deserve to be here for the future? So those are really good examples, and it's better than my answer because it's really hard to like come up with one of these. And I think for me is I would have wanted some level of admission of like where are your mistakes. So like my question that I kind of thought of was like self scouting was like a big talking point when he came in here and arrived in 2022. And you've admitted now that you've made some mistakes. So I don't want you to go through, each individual one, but I would like you to identify, what you think your biggest mistakes were. If you could name, 1 through 3. If you give me 1, that's fine. If you could give me 3, that's even better. And how you'd grade your performance thus far. Because like you're admitting to making mistakes. Okay, which? Tell me what you think your mistakes are. Because I want to know, because I've got a laundry list of them and I can put them in my order, but I want to know what you think. You know
Yeah,
what
it
I
would have
mean?
been nice to get pressed on like run defense specifically, Graham Gano,
Well, to his
Taylor
credit,
Wright being on the roster.
Pat Leonard tried very hard.
Yeah.
And this is why my question's kind of bad, is because he's just not gonna do that.
Right.
So
Um. All right, let's hit the next question.
and the next one comes from Anashi. With Wan'Dale currently on pace for over 1,000 yards, has your evaluation of him changed, or is he simply being utilized better?
So I was curious, like how much has my thoughts on Wan'Dale Robinson changed, Rob? And I went and listened to our wide receiver review that I did on Talking Giants last January. And I'll be honest, I don't think it's changed. I took some bullet points of the things I said on him. I said he's solid. He does have limitations, but I think he's an above average player. He's a top 10 player on the Giants, second best player from his class. Better QB play will help him. It'll get his, yards per catch up from 7.5 to 10. Different quarterback play changes some about his game, not a ton, but he'll get more of like those 10 to 15-yard corner routes that he does really well, like that sick route he had against the Lions. Was limited to choice routes in the previous offense. Said he was replaceable, right? Which we'll talk about that. He'll get open on some zone beaters down the field, but overall he's not a downfield threat. He's not running a vertical on the outside or a post route, and he'll have some big games. So I'm like, man, that's kind of how I feel about Wan'Dale. I will say the thing I wanted to see him do this year was get more yak, and I think he's done that, right? The Eagles touchdown. He's 11th in yak in the NFL this year. Yak per reception is not something I look at that often because it's very sample size biased. Guys that have a lot of catches aren't going to have as much yak reception as, certain guys. Here's where I get so frustrated talking about Wan'Dale because I like him. Like I said, I think he's an above average player. Grump, I think his role goes back to very similar to what it was previously was when Malik Neighbors comes back. And I have a hard time getting overly invested in Wan'Dale. And I know you like Wan'Dale more than me, so I want to hear your thoughts on
Yeah, I think I do, because I think that, well, let me start with this. My analysis of him changed since draft day a few years ago. Initially, when he was drafted, I was kind of bummed. I was not into that pick. Didn't like it. Didn't like the value. And I think what I realized later on is that he felt like a piece to a jigsaw puzzle that was missing all of the surrounding pieces. Like, when you're doing one and you're like, oh, it's this color, so it goes here, but I don't have any of the other ones that go into that piece right now. So I know it goes somewhere in this spot. It just kind of felt like that. Like it was just missing all of the supporting pieces to make it feel solid. And those pieces being like the QB situation was rocky. The O-line was terrible. And I think that's the biggest thing, because it almost required the entire offensive scheme to revolve around a quick passing game, which put him within 3 yards or behind the line of scrimmage for almost all of his catches, all of his targets. And I think that what we're seeing now this year with this offensive line actually all healthy together, and playing well. I think the offensive line is doing well. I think this is what allows Wan'Dale Robinson to be utilized better, right? I think the overall state of the team prevented him from being utilized optimally. I do think that the amount of yard, like he's not a Monroe St. Brown, right? Like he doesn't have that ability to stretch the field vertically. But I do think that he can frustrate teams. And I think a different offensive coordinator coming in here could continue to use him in tandem with Malik Neighbors so that he is better than he was in his first 2 years, his utilization. But I don't think that we should be expecting these 1,000-yard seasons from him with a healthy Malik Neighbors.
That's where so right now he has 73 catches, 828 yards. He's on pace for 95 catches, which I think might even be less than last year, and then 1,082 yards. So that's going to be like his career year, which, you know what I think has been my biggest change in my Wan'Dale Robinson thoughts, Grump?
No.
I think it's Darius Slayton having a weak year. I really think if Darius Slayton was having a similar year to where he usually has, I think I would be, the conversation about Wan'Dale would be very similar. But he's had a couple big games, right? Had a career game against the Lions. I think them playing with so much 2 tight end sets has allowed him to have some of those big games. And then you have the Cowboys game, which I do think is an anomaly where they're just leaving the seams wide open. Like, I don't think that'll ever happen again. If it does, it'll be very rare. But I think Darius Slayton having a weak year really throws a wrench into what, like, I think about Wan'Dale and his future with the team. And, you know, here's another thing, Grump. Did you know this? As much as Darius Slayton is having a down year, Wan'Dale and Darius Slayton have played together in 10 games this season. Slayton has more yards than him in 6 of those 10, right? And now Wan'Dale's had the 4 bigger games, right? He's had the Lions, the Cowboys, and then Slayton wasn't there for the Broncos game, and then for the Broncos and Eagles game when Wan'Dale had big games. But it's just, when there's decisions to be made this offseason, right? Like Jermaine Illuminor, Cordell Flott, and then you want to attack other spots in free agency. Another thing I said on the wide receiver review last January, I was like, he might be the guy I'm making the sacrifice of letting go to prioritize other things. And when you have Malik Neighbors back, if you're paying Wan'Dale Robinson $15 million plus per year, you're basically saying, I have no desire to make a big investment into this wide receiver spot, whether that's high draft capital or another free agent, for at least 2 years. And so I flip-flop on Wan'Dale and what to do with him all the time because he is a good player. He does have limitations. But the thing that I think puts me back in the side of, like, I'm just not making a big investment in him is the fact that I think his role goes back to very similar to what it was when Malik Neighbors returns. And that is, like, he's a slot-only player. He's played a little more on the outside this year because they've been so thin at wide receiver number 1, and they've run so many 2 tight end sets that he just plays outside, by default in those situations where I don't know. But here's the other part, Grump. I don't know what his contract's going to be, right? When we're going to do a pending free agent episode this offseason, I've been pretty damn good on those episodes, not to pat myself on the back of projecting what guys are going to get. I have no clue what Wan'Dale's going to get because you look at the Shakir contract, but Wan'Dale having a good year this year, like, I have no clue what he's going to get, and that obviously makes a big difference of what I think about the future with him.
So, while I think his role will go back to something similar to what it was, I think it'll still be better. And I also think that the general state of the offense, I feel like I've said this a million times, so I hate to repeat myself, and I know it's really annoying, but, like, a lot of the last couple of years for Wan'Dale is not only just catching passes around the line of scrimmage, just that the team is so bad and so predictable, and the quick passing game is so predictable that, like, he's had to, like, break, like, 4 tackles before even making it to the line of scrimmage. So, in a more open offense, even with the same role, if he's out there and just has one man to beat, he can and will beat that guy a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So, the reduced role, I don't think necessarily means reduced down to just this slog of an offense. And, the 1,000-yard
can I-
receiving.
Interrupt you?
Yeah, go ahead.
It depends on who the offensive coordinator is.
Oh, yeah.
That role is the same for, like, Josh Allen, I think, is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. That slot role in that Josh Allen offense is the exact same role that Wan'Dale has used before. So, like, it depends just because, Josh Allen's this big arm quarterback and stuff, like, doesn't change Shakir's role and what they're doing. I think Wan'Dale has more juice than Khalil Shakir. Also, the Bills are kind of funny. Like, every player on their team is like, I saw someone described as like outside slot, tight end slot, regular slot, big slot, running back slot. Um, but like again, it's just if he's not going to be that outside receiver, like his plays down the field are like limited to corner routes and then zone beaters, which zone beaters anybody can fill that role.
Again, but I still think that it still changes the way you feel about it. The role being the role, like Khalil Shakir getting 820 yards on 100 targets last year is not the same as 140 for Wan'Dale to only get 700 yards. You know what I mean? So like a better offense that's more expansive, I think it allows him to be a little bit better. I don't really, I don't feel that strongly about this, but the other thing is that just as a side note, 1,000-yard receiving yard for Wan'Dale Robinson isn't just a career high. Outside of the one Malik Neighbors year, that would make him the most yards receiving for this team since when?
Oh,
Darius Slayton
oh,
has
yeah.
never had 1,000-yard, not even close. He's been 300 yards away almost every year. So, I mean, this is not a small feat for him. And I understand you're not wrong about like the Dallas game being like a ridiculous weight in his shoulder. But like, I think even now, even with like the extra targets he's getting with Malik Neighbors out, I think Malik Neighbors added to this offense allows him to be in situations where he only has one or two guys to beat, and he can get yak that way. So,
Yak is the key for him. Like he's got to consistently be good at yak for him to be at his best.
yeah. So I mean, Wan'Dale to me is the most interesting player in this free agency. Not the most important, but the most interesting because there's definitely a role for him on this team. It's just how good is he in that role, given the limitations he does have, like with length and the ability to stretch the field, and how important is that role on this team, given all the other holes that they have.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a player where I just varied in like my thoughts, not on who he is as a player, of like what to do with him. I really can't remember a player where I'm like, what kind of contract is he gonna get? Even if you can get him at this, do you even keep him when you're making like, where usually I'm really just way more convicted, whether I end up being right or wrong, regardless. I just don't have that with Wan'Dale, and I just feel like, oh man, I don't want to be a victim of him having a career year on a team that somebody has to get these catches, and Slayton having a bad year flat out. Slayton's having his worst year of his career outside of 2021 when they, signed Golladay and drafted Tony and had Shepard. So, all right, next question.
Next question comes from @AllBlueGiants. After the Joe Schoen presser, 1 out of my 2 questions were answered. 1, if he understood the question, and 2, if you can read an ad.
I can read an ad. I am so excited to see the Giants at home against the Commanders this weekend. Grump's going to be there. And I'm like, how am I going to get there, though? What in the world? How do I do this? Well, guess what? I go to SeatGeek, and that's why today's episode is sponsored by SeatGeek, and I want to give them a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. The NFL and college football in full swing. The NBA is officially back, and right now, you can get World Cup tickets on SeatGeek. And guess where the World Cup final and the World Cup in general is going to be played?
MetLife.
In the New York, New Jersey area. Can I tell you something? SeatGeek, I hope you're listening to this. I really want to go to that. I really want to go to the World Cup final.
Just throwing that out there.
I'm just, I would, I really want to go to the World Cup final. So
Green means go. Just saying.
yeah, you know what? I would do a month of ads for free. How about that? If you can send me, you know what? I might do that. We might have to get into a barter system here, SeatGeek. But I love using SeatGeek. I'm using them for my tickets to the Devils game on Thursday and the Giants game on Sunday. It's extremely easy. It takes, seconds to get your tickets into your account. And SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on the scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use code Bobby2025 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code Bobby2025. I wonder if that code will be done at the end of 2025. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. You'll be glad you did.
You will be glad you did. Are we going to that Devil's Lightning game?
If you're down, I'm going. So are you going?
That's the 11th.
Thursday.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. I'm down.
We're recording the preview pod and then going to the game.
Sounds good to me. I'm excited for that. I just saw the Devils. I didn't use SeatGeek, but I also didn't buy the tickets. They were a gift. So
I bet you they use SeatGeek.
They better have cracked some skulls. All right, next question. Next question comes from @LilJuicebox24. Do you think Carter's actions stem from the coaching or lack of leadership in the locker room? Seems like Joe Schoen was struggling to name leaders during his presser, especially when the names he let go were mentioned.
So I think it can come from the coaching staff, but here's the other thing. He's not a kid. He's a grown man. Grow up. Like, that's the other, like, Abdul Carter needs to take, it's not anybody else's fault, right? No one else is getting suspended. I do think there is an issue with, accountability and stuff like that. And I think that has more to do with, really dialing in film study and being dialed in on practice more so than, but being late is a personal problem. Should get your ass there on time. I know Brian Daboll fined guys for being late, right? And he's basically always done that. But be an adult and get there. And here's what I'll say with Abdul Carter as a player too. He has more total sacks, hits, and pressures than like Brian Burns or anyone on this team, and that's good. And that can be an indicator that sacks are coming. But they do have to come eventually, right? Like, you need to get sacks flat out. Like, we didn't draft him just to get pressures and quarterback hits. He needs to be a player that gets double-digit sacks consistently. So those are the two things from Abdul Carter. Like, I think he's done a lot of good things, but grow up and get sacks. Like, as simple as that, Grump.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I think it's both lack of leadership in the locker room and lack of leadership from the coaching staff. And I know Brian Daboll's fined people for being late, but if it's been a consistent problem all year, then clearly the fines aren't working, right? So right there, I mean, like, that just, I don't know, just tells you that what you're doing is not getting through. So what's the point of him fining him anymore? Were you just collecting money? Where does that money even go when you fine your own players? I don't even get that. I guess it just goes back to the organization. But if it's not working, then you're not really disciplining anybody, right? So that doesn't really help. But as much as I want to say it's both, and you're absolutely right that Abdul Carter is a grown man. 21 years old is not a kid, especially these guys are different than us. I think it's more so coaching. And the reason I say that is because even though there's a definite lack of leaders in the defensive locker room, even if there were, it's not very easy for another player to stand up and be a leader and be taken seriously by the younger players if the man at the top lets his star players live above the rules. Like, why are you going to listen to your older brother if your dad just doesn't care? You're not.
There was an issue with the offense last year, where there was some leaders like, hey, we need to hold this guy accountable. And they were basically ignored and told to worry about yourself. So,
yeah, so I mean, I think it starts at the top first and foremost. Even if you had good leaders in that defensive locker room, I don't think that they would be able to do their job as leaders effectively.
Now that we're on this leadership topic, that's like what the Giants are looking for in their head coach.
Yeah.
And this is my worry with the Giants. It's not like, oh, I don't want leadership or accountability or someone who runs a tight, a tough practice and stuff. It's that the Giants have the, hey, fix one issue at a time. And I just worry that they do that. And by doing that, they create other issues where it's like, yeah, the offensive coordinator sucks. And that's hurting Jackson Dart's development and all this. that's just kind of been in my head. I was like, yeah, I want leadership and stuff too, but I just leadership doesn't always come through being a hard. Like I think Kevin O'Connell is probably a really good leader, even though people laughed at him as a head coaching candidate at the time. Like you don't need Brian Flores type to be, hold people accountable and stuff. In fact, that can be counterintuitive at times because guys tune you out quicker. Um, but back to Abdul Carter again. He needs to show up on time. The thing I'm like, you know what? Start getting sacks. Get more consistent sacks. Like, the first 8, 9 games of the year, I'm like, listen, he is performing. The sack numbers are coming. All right. Well, they haven't really shown up. Um, start to get those numbers because those matter. We didn't draft you third overall to just get quarterback hits and pressures. We drafted you third overall to get sacks, um, and handle all this bullshit that's going on. Because if you can't handle it, you'll never be good.
Oh yeah, and like that's I think the thing that disappoints me the most is not just repeating the mistakes, all year and then, back to back being called out and then but like you got to be able to just be accountable. Like you've been called out, you've been publicly, which to your point, like you don't need to hire Tom Coughlin to, set the clocks 5 minutes early to be a disciplinarian. You just need someone to actually discipline guys and increase the discipline when it doesn't work. You sit out a series, now you're going to sit out multiple series. Like this kind of stuff, it puts it in the public eye. Now I would say now more than ever, the public is the most negative it's ever been on Abdul Carter while still not being negative, right? Like I don't think anyone had a lot of problems with Abdul Carter 5 weeks ago.
I think the primetime game really changes it, where now everyone's, "Oh, Abdul Carter missed the whole first quarter. Oh, he only has a sack and a half on the season. Oh, he's getting mad about a joke, report that was put out there." Um, like, the large public is not looking at quarterback hits and pressures and watching cut-ups that me and Nick Filato put together of Abdul Carter or listening to the Mailbag podcast when we break down an Abdul Carter segment for 15 minutes a few weeks ago. So, like, get sacks. Like it's as simple as that. If that stuff starts to happen, then everyone's gonna love him. So, if I was um, but again, I also do like Abdul Carter's film. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say, "Oh, he's not getting sacks." I do. I think he's gonna get sacks, and it's not just based on me liking him as a prospect or being a delusional Giants fan. I watched the film, bro, and I'm like, so if I were to give Abdul Carter a message right now and be like, "Hey, shit's messy right now, but keep trying to ball out," and the film doesn't lie. You are able to produce. It's gonna come eventually. Numbers will come, and then the noise will dial down. We've seen this a million times with different players, Grump. If you continue to do that type of stuff, the numbers will come. Don't forget, Leonard Williams, half a sack season when the Giants traded for him, right? And then guess what happens the next year? 11 and a half sacks. So it was basically the exact same thing. Again, different players, different scenarios and all that, but just put your head down and work. Put your
Oh
head
yeah,
down and work and learn what makes guys go from good to great in the NFL.
100%. The only thing I would add to that is just remember that as negative as people may be at times, ultimately, Giants fans want you to be great. They want to show up to games wearing your jersey, and they want to be screaming in opposing fans' faces when you get sacks. That's what they want, and they're going to be in your corner. I will never forget being in the Indianapolis Colts game and people were chanting Daniel Jones's name. That's what fans want from their players. They can forgive and forget a lot of stuff. Go out there, perform. And how do you perform? Go into the building and get work done. Just get work done. And, you're not going to get sacks if you keep getting benched for being late.
And it'll flip quick,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, look at Theo Johnson. Has 3 good games. Wow, this guy is a piece, right? Now, again, you got to be consistent. Theo Johnson has a couple drops. That all goes away. But, hell, even, 2 questions from now, there's a question about a guy like, has he really turned the corner? And he's not. But we'll talk about that. Next question.
Next question comes from Deek Freak 72. Can you give 3 players playing better than your preseason expectations and 3 players playing worse than your preseason expectations? How do you want to do this? You want to go back and forth better and then back and forth worse?
Let's just do quick. I'll say my 3, and then you say your 3. I'll say my 3, and then we'll discuss. So let's do your three that are doing better than you expected. Go ahead.
Better than I expected this year. Cordell Flott, Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo.
Okay, Cam Scatterbo was a good one. So I actually went Cordell Flott number 1, Jackson Dart number 2, and I put Wan'Dale at 3, just because I didn't think he'd get the 1,000-yard season this year. We don't need to we just did a 20-minute segment on Wan'Dale. We don't need to do that. Flott's the easy one.
Yeah.
I mean, we did our camp battle polls, and 88% of people said he should be the backup, and now he might be the best. He probably is their best corner on the team. Dart's the one where it's crazy to look back, Grump, and the conversation is like, when does Dart play? Like week 13?
Yeah.
And here we are. It's
Where it's like Russell Wilson has to go on the field for 2 plays, and I'm just gonna go to the bathroom and walk away from the TV for those 2 plays.
yeah. So it's like just him being, but again, he's playing really well. Sunday or Monday night was I've actually, when I watched the film, bro, I thought it was a below average game, but like, man, he just feels like he has a bit of control of being an NFL quarterback. He doesn't look like he's lost out there at all. Um, a year from now, and then the year after that, will be more debate of like, how good is he? Where does he rank among other quarterbacks, and where scrutiny gets a little more tougher. But like, what we don't have as a rookie is Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, fill the Trevor Lawrence, where it's just like, he's a rookie. No, we're saying he's doing good things. We're not trying to excuse bad play with he's a rookie.
The Cam Scatterbo thing for me is just, it was a real question for me if his style of play was going to translate to the next level. I really wasn't sure. And beyond that, not only has it worked, not only has it worked, but he had like this extra ability to supercharge the rest of the team. He's been a morale booster. I really wasn't sure what we were going to get, but I thought, the value in the 4th round, why not, right? Like, getting bodies in the running back room was definitely needed. You eventually needed somebody to kind of get you tough yards, but like, man, I did not expect him year 1 to just come in here and be running over dudes and breaking tackles, not giving up on plays. This dude just doesn't care. I'm not going to try and overvalue what he is, but what I expected coming into this year was, I had a lot of reservations, and I was just as much as I liked watching him in college, I just wanted to tempo myself and, not get too excited and let him see in the NFL game. Like, this is way better than I thought.
Yeah. The question was like, as fun as he was, there was red flags on the scouting report. And it's like, all right, is he going to be able to run through the chest of defensive linemen and break the tackles of linebackers? And he showed absolutely he can do that. So, we always knew he could break tackles of DBs in the NFL, but so you've seen that. So that's a good answer. What would be your 3 worse than expectations players?
I think this one's way easier to answer. Worse than my expectations. Start right off with Dexter Lawrence. After that, Darius Slayton. After that, Russell Wilson. All 3 of those guys are playing way worse than I thought.
This is where you can go a lot. I don't like putting Dex on here, because I actually thought the Patriots game was terrible by Dex, and there has been some of those games, but like, when you watch the film, bro, he's their second best player on defense this year, Brian Burns, and he's been a good player. Like, if we didn't have that standard of like amazing, we would.
But is that what you expected?
I agree, but I just think in a year. So I'm actually, Tyrone Tracy's number 1 for me.
Okay, yeah.
He was the one guy from last year's class when I was telling everybody that last year's class was overrated. I was like, but not him. He's a hit. And now it's like, is he even RB2 next year? To start the season? Like, that's I didn't imagine being in that spot. Slayton is on there for me. And so I guess I would go between Abdul Carter or Dexter Lawrence. So it's like, as much as I like Abdul Carter's rookie season, I thought he'd get more sacks, man. I really thought he'd have like an 8-sack season. But I guess I'll go Dexter Lawrence, because you know what? Dexter Lawrence isn't getting the consistent hits and pressures and wins that he used to. And he's also not getting any sacks either. He has less sacks than Abdul Carter. So I'll go Dexter Lawrence as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if I wanted to put Carter. I have him in parentheses next to it. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do that, but overall, he's been consistently getting pressures. I don't think that Abdul Carter really had too many bad games, whereas Dexter Lawrence was like going up against backup centers and not getting anything. And it's
Yeah.
like Abdul Carter's a rookie, going
He
up
had a
against backups, whatever. But Dexter Lawrence going up against backups is just not what I expected.
You know what? I'm flat out taking Abdul Carter even totally away from the list. He had a bad 3-game stretch, and these little suspensions are clouding my judgment. You had asked me 3 weeks ago what I thought about Abdul Carter, and I said I would say please. I would take him again in a redraft outside of quarterback. I like his film. You know what? I'm not letting this recency bias cloud my judgment. Abdul Carter, you're off the list. Get more sacks, buddy, but you're nowhere near the damn list. I'm sorry for even considering you on it.
Russell Wilson for me is somebody that I knew had limitations. I understood the signing though. Whatever about the money, that's not really part of the I understood the wanting to get a veteran that you think can come in, learn an offense very quickly and bridge your gap, whatever. I get it. I get the signing. I did not think he would look like absolute dog shit this year. And that's what he looked like. Like just absolute trash. This is not what I expected. And again, I didn't expect him to be good. I didn't expect him to win lots of games this year or anything like that. But for him to be benched this early, like we were saying with Jackson Dart, like, oh, when does he start? Week 13? Like, I really didn't expect Brian Daboll to have to go out there very early in the year and be like, this is my decision. I am benching this dude. You know what I mean? So that to me was pretty alarming when I really look back at what I thought of everything preseason and where I am now.
Yeah, I didn't have very high hopes for him. I didn't think he'd be as bad as he was. But yeah, I mean, the difference between this year and last year is this year he was just staring at the rush. And it's like, that's the switch that goes from you go from below average to you can't play him. Next question.
Next question comes from definitely not a cop. How has John Michael Schmitz looked? I saw him tossing someone to the ground last week, and to my untrained eye, he looks good. What does the film say, bro?
Well, bro, I find Joe Shane, that's another thing from Joe Shane press conference. Like, we got a center. I'm like, do we? Do we actually? That's an appealing part of this job. So you know what I reminded myself of? On the award show last year, I voted John Michael Schmitz as the most improved player. You're like, what? So last year he gave up 5 sacks according to PFF. This year 1, and that's obviously a big difference. But 3 of the sacks last year were those stupid pop-out protections where they're facing these double mug looks, and if somebody backs out, he goes and takes the edge, and teams were game planning it. So it wasn't his fault, but he was getting credited for them. I think he's the almost exact same player as last year. He hasn't had the recent like one-on-one matchup with like a Vita Vea who destroys him and embarrasses him. Um, but like, he's in the right
Jalen
place.
Carter?
Jalen Carter didn't play. Was Jalen Carter even?
The second game they played, Jalen Carter played. Didn't he just absolutely annihilate
Was that a
him?
Schlotman game? I can't remember exactly. Actually, yeah, he gave him a sack in that game, I think. But like he's smart. He handles one-on-ones with bad defensive tackles and pass protection well. He's still really bad on the run game. Like he gives up ground. He limits what you can do. He can hold on to blocks, but like guys just two-gap him very easily, right? Like, when I watch the film, bro, the run game, it's just defensive linemen get their hands on him, extend, and they just get the they basically just get to decide, all right, running back declare so I can move to that side. So I think he's a serviceable center. He was the same thing I thought last year, but last year the JMS PR was probably a little lower. It's a little higher now. So I think he's the same player as last year, an average pass blocker at center and a below average run blocker.
Yeah, I think overall he's been pretty average. He has improved since his time starting here, as you said. He's not a dummy. Like his mistakes are not, in the wrong place or makes the wrong read. Like he's a smart guy. He's usually in the right place at the right time. His snaps are good. I think on the move, he's probably a better blocker when he kicks out and gets to the second level or something like that. He combos pretty well, but overall, he's not a good run blocker. At best, he kind of torques guys out of the way.
Yeah.
Never really gets any drive whatsoever. And I think like even in pass blocking situations, he's pretty average. Doesn't give up too much ground. There's usually room in the pocket for quarterbacks to step up because when he gives up ground, it's usually to one side or the other, leaving place for Jackson Dart to step up in the pocket. But when there's good talent in front of him, he is never an advantage. He's never going to handle that well. He struggles with the talent in front of him. He struggles, I think, also with quick shots into the gaps. Like, it's not that he doesn't get a hand on the guy. It's just that he's so late and doesn't recover from those that he ends up just kind of chasing in those situations. At the end of the day, I don't think that he's ever an asset, but he's also usually not a liability. It just sounds like it translates to average to me.
Yeah, again, and I think average is even a compliment because I think he's well below average as a run blocker. And in pass protection, he's not an issue unless you get a matchup with a nose tack, which they just haven't had a lot of those this year. And he's usually getting two set of hands. He's smart, right? Like, that's the thing with JMS. He's extremely smart. He's always in the right place. And then when he gets two smart guys next to him, and Runyon and Greg Van Roten, that's why this interior offensive line, despite not having any above average players, it hasn't been an issue this year because they're not getting blitzed a ton to create a bunch of one-on-ones. Dart has been good avoiding some of that stuff too. So yeah, but I went back and looked. I was like, oh yeah, I did vote John Michael Schmitz most improved. Now, last year was the worst possible year to do the most improved. In fact, it pissed me off because the fans last year voted Micah McFadden most improved when he won the award the year before. And don't tell me he's the most improved player 2 years in a row. So yeah, last question.
Last question comes from Stan McCune. What was your favorite, least favorite, and funniest memory from the Brian Daboll era?
This was tougher than I thought. We'll go quick favorite. I mean, and I took out the playoff win.
Yep.
Week 1 Titans, right? We could get creative and stuff, but week 1 Titans going for 2, losing his mind, dancing in the locker room. Like, that was a moment right there.
That was a close second for me. That picture of him dancing in the locker room was my Twitter header up until the day he was fired, which it's now a picture of Mike Kafka at the Senior Bowl.
I noticed that.
Yep. Oh, I mean, I can't have Brian Daboll on there anymore. It's got to be gone. So, but for me, I went with something that was a little bit more personal for me, and it was the 2022 Packers game in London, because I went to it and I really had no expectations of that game. Really thought we were going to lose, and not only was it a compelling, exciting game, but come away with a win. And Packers fans, that was the first game that Green Bay got internationally. They came in droves, dude, and they left in misery. I was taking pictures of people at the bar, just absolutely miserable after that game. It was awesome. So that was a really big moment for me.
Yeah, for some reason I thought about the Packers game as well too, because you remember him coming off the field, pumping his fists and losing his mind. So that was what the least favorite and funny was actually hard to do because doesn't really anything. I actually think is different. Like, unless you're just like, oh, they lost this game. I have 2 for funniest, and I might think of more later. The blue tent thing, where he's just losing his mind on the doctors, and being like, they're actively playing the game, and he's like freaking out because Russell Wilson's on the field. And you know what was an underrated one? Remember last year when Drew Lock scrambled and then just ran sideways? And he's just like, Drew Lock is walking to him, and he's just calling me like, forward. You have to go forward.
Was that the Thanksgiving game?
No, I think it was the Saints game.
Oh, okay.
Where that was like, you've seen Brian Daboll lose his mind on Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor. And that was like a moment of like, you're just so stupid, Drew Lock. Like, I think you're a moron. Like, where I'm just going to condescendingly be like, you have to go forward. So what was a funny one for you? Because he was so reserved in everything.
Yeah.
Outside of like losing his mind when they won the game and yelling at people.
I had 2 funny ones also. And one of them is like depressing funny. The Jets game where Graham Gano missed the 35-yarder to win the game due to a leg injury that he would later need surgery for. I mean, that to me was just so bad that it was comical, and I was at that game, and I just couldn't help but laugh. I was like, "Are we're not a serious team right now." So that to me was kind of funny, but in a dark way. The other one was, the Bills game in 2023, where right before the half, Tyrod Taylor did that dumb shit, and the clock ran out on the half.
Yeah.
They couldn't score, and he lost his mind. First on Mike Kafka, who was just like, "No, I didn't call that play." Like the whole reaction of that was hilarious. And then he's trying to go into the tunnel and he's got to stop for those stupid mandatory like sideline reporter things. And he's like, "I'm sorry, I can't focus on any of these questions right now. I've lost my mind." Uh, which was pretty funny for me.
I almost went into my least favorite category, where it's like, dude, chill out.
Yeah, I guess the other one could have been no, the chill out thing for me is the rage challenge from this year. That's where you gotta, like, get your control, which is also, if you're a non-fan, is pretty funny, if you're, like, a fan of any other team. My least favorite moment was, without question, one of the easiest things, was the home opener in 2023. Pouring rain, 40 to nothing, come in there with all these expectations. I just got soaking wet, freezing. I think I got sick from that game, all to watch one of the worst performances I have ever in my life sat through. That was the lowest point for me.
Yeah, so I think you're like, I was thinking more like Brian Daboll specific than I guess moments. I mean, the 40-0 loss to the Cowboys was as low as it gets. I was thinking like least favorite things he did. One of my least favorite things he ever did was after they got blown out by the Bucks last year and players questioned their effort, him spending the film session showing cut-ups of them having good effort.
Oh,
It's like, oh, this is just a joke, dude. And probably the abuse of Kafka, where it's just like, dude, let this guy go if you're just gonna freaking like,
just treating him like a stepchild.
yeah, just terrible. So I guess that was on there, but it was hard to find specific thing. Maybe firing Jerome Henderson last year, which was like kind of weak. I know people probably go to the Wink Martindale, like maybe game ball Wink. Part of me kind of. So here's the thing: as much as Brian Daboll handled that unprofessionally, I think people forget about this in the Wink Martindale situation. Wink Martindale's ego was an issue.
Yes.
Like, people kind of brush that under the table. Even, like, Authentic had a conversation with him a couple weeks ago at the Maryland-Michigan game, and, like, he pointed out things that were wrong about Brian Daboll, but, like, Wink, like, his ego comes out in that a bit too. And that was an issue, even though Brian Daboll and they did a lot. Brian Daboll's issues led to a lot of that. Like, that was an issue as well too. Um Trying to think. I'm actually just searching Brian Daboll on my account to, like, see if there's anything that
To add on to that Wink Martindale thing too, is that, like, part of that ego problem is that you had a dynamic where you had a guy who really did believe that he is a head coach in Wink Martindale. He'd interviewed for it many times before in the past. He even said what his plan would be, like, he would hire Joe Brady to be his offensive coordinator. Like, I think that's a guy who didn't get along with Brian Daboll. They didn't mesh. He didn't believe in what he was doing, and I'm not even sure what was going on in the building, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some jockeying in there where he felt like he deserved that job. And I don't even know. I don't really know what his plan was at certain points in the year. Like, was he going to try and cozy up to the right people or bail? Or I don't know. But as much as Brian Dable didn't handle that perfectly, like, it was not a situation where I think you could handle it perfectly. There's no perfect way to handle that.
yeah. The goatee he had was pretty funny in 2022.
Oh wow, I did.
And his head was, like, perfectly round at that point, and it was just very, like, "This is a terrible look on you," which was funny.
Um,
Oh, I'm looking one. Here's one where he's challenging a call against the Ravens, and he's up to the ref, and he just takes the flag and goes, throws it on the ground like that. Any last ones before we go?
Funny moments. There was a press conference where after 2022 in the summer, not a press conference, I'm sorry, it was just like an interview where someone asked him, what's something you can improve on? And like within seconds, he just goes, my weight. It's kind of funny.
Actually, you know what? That's what it was Giant. It was his opening press conference when Giant Insider asked him, he's like, "Where are you from?" South Carolina. And Giant,
That was hysterical.
I'm from Brooklyn. Oh, okay.
That was pretty funny. We were laughing.
No, it's in Brooklyn, actually. Born and raised.
Yeah. Oh man.
That you know what? That's the funny.
That's the moment right there.
Wait,
With
are
that
you from South Carolina? No, Brooklyn, actually. Born and raised. She's like, yeah, I know, you fucking idiot. Ah. All right, that's an episode. He is from South Carolina. That's an episode. We'll see you guys. Hey, next episode, me and Grump will be together, unless some other crazy stuff happens. We have to do an emergency pod. So we'll see you. We'll see you in New Jersey. Until then, let's go Big Blue.